All right, we're going to continue our discussion of the 19th century by briefly discussing a very important and a very complex figure, Hegel. When I was in grad school, I first spent some time with Hegel and his ideas, and they are very complex and they're hard to master, which is why we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on them or go very deep into them. But while I was in grad school, 3 German students who had completed their PhD came to my grad school, and we asked them why are you here? You should be done with with school at this point. And they were all philosophy majors, and they said, well, we do not understand Hegel, and we wanted to come to the U.S. and see if you could shed any light on Hegel's thought. And we were amused and disappointed because we were hoping, being German, they could explain Hegel to us, because Hegel is not milk. Hegel is tough, grisly meat to chew, but is incredibly influential. So is worth some of our time. I want to limit what I expect of the student in this, because it is very difficult. I do want the student to be able to explain the Hegelian dialectic in a very simple, basic manner, and I want the student to understand this dialectic's relationship is to the idea of progress. Okay. Hegel was a German philosopher and is widely credited with popularizing the idea of progress in the Enlightenment. And he used this very bizarre language of abstract, negative, and concrete. Okay, talking about how one progresses to something better. So Hegel would say, well, you have something abstract, and then you run into its negative. And in contemplating both the abstract and its negative, we are able to come up with something concrete. That's not very helpful to most of us. It wasn't very helpful to me, at least. So I needed the thought of another philosopher, a guy named Fichte, another German philosopher, and he explained this a little bit more clearly. Instead of using these odd terms of abstract, negative, and concrete, he used the term thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Okay, so in its basic form, you have A and you have not A, and when you combine these two, you come up with B. And B is a better, more accurate version of A or not A. So it represents a progression towards higher knowledge. And then B, therefore, thereby is combined with not B to produce C. C is combined with not C to produce D. And there's a sense that we're always getting better. For a ridiculous illustration, let's say we have Superman. And the opposite of Superman is Batman. Okay? So if we were to progress by combining Superman and Batman, we get Super Batman. And Super Batman is better than Superman and is better than Batman. So we have progressed historically. Hegel and Fichte were under the assumption that history and philosophy was this process by which human knowledge is constantly engaged in improvement, where someone says, I believe A to be true, and someone else says, I believe A not to be true, and in discussion, in dialectic, in dialogue, you come up with a third something, a tertium quid, that is a synthesis of these two ideas and is better explains the world than either of these two ideas. That philosophically is the foundation for progress. Okay? And if you interpret history as steps of progress, then you draw that line out. I mean, if you are at a point in time and you look at history as a progression to get to where you are, then you assume that the trajectory after that is you'll keep getting better and better and better. And in the 19th century, there was no reason to believe that it wouldn't get better and better and better. We had amazing ideas and inventions and developments, and it seemed like history was on this inexorable march towards progress, towards something better. Our own Constitution even reflects this idea, in order to form a more perfect union. In other words, this project of perfection, this project of developing a union, is never complete. There can always be a more perfect version of it. So as we pass this law, eventually someone opposes us, that law or whatever, and we come up with a better law that synthesizes those two. Hegel and Fichte were both the product of this Enlightenment assumption, this assumption that what we're doing now is better than what we did before. And what Hegel and Fichte did is give it a voice, identify a process, actually mandate a process by which not only history did progress, but how we should progress history. And in our next lecture, we're going to talk about how this idea of progress manifested itself throughout the long 19th century with a lot of people we're very familiar with.